His disciple Arjuna worship the Supreme Lord with their intelligence. So this evening we're going to read from the 13th chapter, Bhagavad Gita as it is, 26th verse. Very nice, important verse, and as we shall see, Srila Prabhupada says it's very applicable to the modern time. So this verse reads, Anye tvevam ajananta shudvanyeva upasate te pichati truntyeva mrityum shuti parayana. Please repeat. Anye, others, tu, but, evam, thus, ajananta, without spiritual knowledge, Shrutva, by hearing, Anyevya, from others, Upasate, begin to worship, Te, they, Api, also, Cha, and, Atitaranti, transcend, Eva, certainly, Mrityum, the path of death, Shruti Parayana, implying to the process of hearing. Translation. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about Him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Purport. This verse is particularly applicable to modern society, because in modern society there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there is no knowledge of philosophy. As for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there is a chance for advancement by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing, because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress. Especially, according to Lord Chaitanya, if he hears the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. It is stated therefore that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age no one needs to change his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization and follow in his footsteps, one will be gradually elevated to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended, and this is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead, back to home. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Lord upon hearing about Him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Mukam karoti bhachalam bhangam lanayate grim yad kripatadaham bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam. Now, this verse begins with the word Anye, means others. Krishna is saying there are others who are ajananta, they have no spiritual knowledge. but by hearing from authorities, from the right source, then they too may be elevated, mrityu shruti parayana, beyond the grip of birth and death. Now, if Krishna begins the verse with others, then that means, obviously, he must have been talking about someone else before. So we can look at that verse, text 25, just before, where he says, some perceive the supersoul within themselves through meditation, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruitive desire. So in this verse then, Sri Krishna is speaking about yogis and jnanis and karmis who are also on the path of spiritual advancement by following some portion of the Vedas. The karmis, they follow karma kanda, which is regulated work. Karma means work. So everyone is engaged in work, but the Vedic civilization prescribes work by which we gradually become advanced in consciousness. So this advancement is especially affected through what is called yajna, sacrifice. One should work, but sacrifice the fruits of his work to the Supreme. Now, there is a whole system for this. In the karma kanda process, the brahmana, the priest who performs yajna, he is indispensable. He is most important. He must be brahmana. Actually, the whole yajna, the whole act of offering is done through the brahmana only. Then, besides karma kanda, then you have the jnana process. So jnana is cultivation of knowledge. This is for those who have gone beyond the karma. Karma means one is attached. One is attached to sense gratification, fruitive work, family life. And this leads inevitably to frustration. Just as we see with age. As age comes, one gets older, then one can no longer enjoy these pleasures of youth. And one becomes naturally thoughtful and starts to wonder, what is my life for? What shall I do? So then there is this jnana path, which is a path of study under spiritual master. One accepts guru and studies, but this study, speculative study, it is simply meant to bring one to the point of vairagya, jnana vairagya. These two words go together. So jnana means knowledge, and vairagya means renunciation. Raga, the root is raga, that means attachment. It's like the karmis, they're attached. That's why they're practicing karma yoga, because they're attached. But vairagya means detachment. Detachment through knowledge, through higher understanding. Basically, it means to see that this world is illusion. This body is not myself. It's going to pass away in time. So what is the use of working very long and very hard to maintain this body or others' bodies? So that's the goal of jnana, just to understand this world is illusion. Then there's yoga mentioned here. So yoga means by austerity, meditation. Then one actually, you see, by jnana there's come a kind of theoretical detachment, understanding. But in yoga, that one actually becomes fixed in renunciation and starts to elevate his consciousness out of this world. Step by step, gradually. There are different stages of yoga. Beginning with Hatha Yoga, for instance. Everybody has heard something about Hatha Yoga. So Hatha Yoga means, there are so many institutes which are teaching Hatha Yoga, they say. But when you study them, you see nobody's practicing Hatha Yoga. When you know what Hatha Yoga really means. It means Yam, Niyam, Asana, Pranayama. So just the first two things, Yam, Niyam, nobody's doing. Yam, Niyam is 10 principles. 10 principles of regulation. Brahmacharya, no sex. All these yogis are, they have sex and they call it yoga. That's what they do. So they're immediately disqualified. These 10 items of Yam Niyam, like Satyam, don't tell lies, Ashteya, don't steal, Brahmacharya, no illicit sex life, Ahimsa, don't kill, Aparigraha, don't be attached to anything, Ishvara Pranida, be always surrendered to the Supreme Lord, Svadhyaya, be always engaged in study of the Vedic scriptures. So these are a full engagement. The yogi is not just, like you see today, sitting in meditation for 15, 20 minutes and then getting up to make a few phone calls and hailing a taxi going downtown. This is not yoga. So, anyway, yes, yoga is very strict, very austere. Now, these systems, karma, jnana, yoga, they're effective for those who are able to practice them. But we have a problem. Actually, we have a twofold problem. Because there are many, many people, even in the Vedic age, even in the Vedic time, there are so many people who can't practice. Because these systems, karma, jnana, yoga, they're especially reserved for the Brahmanas. There's 4 systems, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So, not Kshatriyas also, but mainly Brahmanas. So Vaishyas, Shudras, they're left out. They simply have to serve the Kshatriyas and Brahmanas. And also, 50% of the human population, even in Vedic time, or actually it's a little more than 50%, means the women, 50% or more of humanity, they're left out too. Women are not permitted to practice any of these paths, karma, jnana, yoga, except in an indirect way. If they're married to a yogi, then they can serve that yogi. Or if they're married to a jnani, or if they're married to a karmi. But on their own, they cannot practice. So already we see under Vedic stricture or Vedic rules and regulations, it's a very narrow path. Very narrow path. So many are left out. This is what Krishna means when he says ajananta. Those who don't have this spiritual knowledge. And that's always, generally, it's always the majority of the population. And now, so that's one aspect. But now the second aspect is, we are now in Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga. So in this age of Kali, you're not going to find any Brahmanas. You're not going to find any real karmis. You find vikarmis. Karmi means one who's on the path of work, elevating. Work that elevates. But nobody is on that path. Or very, very few. Maybe in India there's a few. But 99% no. They're vikarmis. By their work they're going to hell. They're doing sinful work. Ugra karma, horrible work. And there are no jnanis. That's what Srila Prabhupada said in the purport we just read. There are people who pass themselves off as philosophers and they talk big, big words, but actually they have no spiritual knowledge at all. Just like, some kind of papagay, some noise coming out of the mouth, but meaningless. Doesn't mean anything. And then yogi, we already discussed these yogis. You see, just gymnastics. So, we have a real problem in the Kali Yuga because everybody is a janata. Everybody is devoid of spiritual knowledge. So then, what are they going to do? What kind of spiritual life will they have? That's the wonderful feature of Bhagavad Gita, because Krishna explains this in the verse we just read. Anyatvevam jananta shrutvanyeva upasate. He says it very clearly. They should just hear from a right source. This is the beginning of the Bhakti Yoga process. And Krishna makes it very clear earlier. He's already made it very clear in the 9th chapter, text 32, that everybody is included, nobody is excluded. In this verse, Mam hi partha vyapashritya ye ishu papayonim striyo vaishyas tata shudras te piyanti param gatim. This is very clear. O son of Prita, those who take shelter in me, though they may be of lower birth. Papayona means sinful. Papa means sin. Yoni means taking birth or womb, like taking birth, appearing from the womb of the mother. So they were born in sinful conditions. And then he gives some examples, like striyo, women, vaishyas means merchants, shudras, workers. All of them who are considered by the strict Vedic calculation to be sinful. Krishna says, all of them, te piyanti param gatim, all of them can attain the supreme destination just by taking shelter of me. And we have so many examples that can be cited to show the superiority of the bhakti path to these other paths. For instance, maybe you know from Krishna book, once Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys, they were in the forest, and Krishna and Balaram expressed some hunger. So then the cowherd boys said, let's go beg, let's go get something for Krishna and Balaram. So they saw some Brahmins. They were performing a big yajna. These were Karmakanda Brahmins. And so they were all involved in all the technical intricacies of, because performing this yajna, these fire sacrifices, it's like a scientific experiment. You see, so rigorous. All the proper ingredients have to be there. The mantras have to be chanted properly. The brahmanas have to be ritualistically pure. You see, even the slightest touch of something that's considered impure, then they have to go take a shower, change their clothes, everything, come back, chant many mantras, touch themselves with kusa grass all over before they can sit down again. So they're all, doing this yajna and very, very concerned that everything is, in order, proper. And then up comes the cowherd boys, Krishna's cowherd friends, and says, oh, you have some nice fruits and things here. Why don't you give them for Krishna and Balaram? They're just out there in the forest. And these Brahmins became very upset. What are you doing? Interrupting here? Disturbing? Can't you see what we're doing? Get out! Go! Now the funny thing is that when Brahmins perform yajna, they always chant the Purusha Shukta, Rig Veda mantra. This is the Lord to whom the yajna is being offered. So Purusha Shukta is Shahasrashisha Purusha. It's a prayer to Lord Vishnu. So there is Vishnu, Krishna, and Balaram, and they're both Vishnu Tattva. Krishna is the original Vishnu, and Balaram is his first expansion, identical with Shankarshan, or they're identical with Vishnu and Shesh. Sheshnag were worshipped by the Brahmins in their yajna. So they're standing there and they're saying, you can just give us directly all these grains and fruits that you've gathered. No, get out, go. So then the cowherd boys, they just went to the nearby village where these Brahmins had come from. So their homes were there, their wives were at home. And they begged from the wives. And the wives immediately became ecstatic. Oh, Krishna and Balaram, they want something? So they were collecting whatever they could and heaping it on the cowherd boys, filling up their arms. They were completely in ecstasy. And so they could go see Krishna. Krishna and Balaram appeared before them, and they felt that their whole life reached full culmination, had borne the ultimate fruit just by seeing the Lord's lotus feet. So they were completely satisfied. Krishna blessed them. They were overwhelmed with Krishna prema, pure love of Godhead. So they became perfect devotees. And the Brahmanas, you see, trying to light their fire, smoke in their face, coughing. And they look over and then they suddenly realized what had happened. You see, they looked over, they saw their wives bowing down before Krishna, and Krishna blessing them, and here they are struggling with this fire and trying to remember their mantras. And then they said, "To hell with our sacrifice." Look, we just wasted everything. There he is, Lord Vishnu himself, taking things directly from our wives. You see, and here we are just fooling around. So, so that's the karma process. And then as far as jnana and yoga, the jnanis and yogis, by mental speculation or by development of mystic power, they're trying to capture the Lord. He's in the heart as super soul. So this is a very difficult process where they try to extend their knowing power to perceive the Lord, and in this way kind of their idea is to capture him by advancement of knowledge, advancement of mystic perception. So this is very difficult. Bahunam Janmanamante Gyanamamam Prapadyante Vasudevi Savamiti Samahatma Sadurlava. Krishna says after many births of such endeavor, then one very rare soul, Mahatma, he may come to the conclusion, Vasudeva Savamiti. He may be able to perceive Vasudeva, Lord Vishnu in the heart. But Mother Yashoda, you see, as we know from Krishna book, she was so easily capturing Krishna. Out of her love, when Krishna, once she was breastfeeding Krishna, and he was hungry, so she was feeding him from her breast, and then the milk boiled over, so she had to put him down, and he became very angry. This is his pastime. He acts. Srila Prabhupada said, I just read a letter, I was looking in Prabhupada's letters, I found a letter where Prabhupada said, the conception that God is the Father, and we are his sons, this is for the material world. In the spiritual world, we become the father or the mother, and God becomes the son. So in the spiritual world, then, the devotee, like Yashoda, she's taking care of God as Krishna, her little son. So she set Krishna down. He became very angry. And so he got up and he stormed off, and he broke a pot of butter, and he started feeding the yogurt and the butter to the monkeys. And then Mother Yashoda, after she'd taken care of the milk, she came back and she saw what Krishna had done. So she decided to discipline her child. So she chased him and caught him. You see, this is what the yogis are trying to do. They're trying to chase Krishna. You see, taking many lifetimes, many births, pursuing the Lord with their mystic vision. Brahma Samhita says they can go for millions and millions of years, traveling at the speed of mind. Speed of mind means as fast as you think of Tokyo, you're there. You see, as soon as I say Tokyo, then you think of Tokyo. Or as soon as I say, Antarctica, or the moon, it comes into your mind. So if one can travel at that speed, imagine how fast that is. So these yogis can travel for millions and millions of years and never attain Krishna. So Mother Yashoda she just chased him a few steps, she caught him, and then she tied him to a grinding mortar. Of course, each time she tried to tie, the rope was 2 inches too short. She got more rope. Again, it was 2 inches too short. Again, third time, 2 inches. Finally, she could do it because of her loving concern. No one can, Krishna is called Ajita. No one can conquer him. No one can capture him. But out of love, because she was thinking, if I don't discipline my son, then he'll grow up to be a bad boy. He'll become a rowdy. So out of love, she was thinking, I have to discipline him. So then Krishna said, all right. So he allowed himself to be captured in that way. So this bhakti process then, it is so superior to karma jnana yoga, because one can very quickly, with love, attain Krishna. Now how do we enter this bhakti path? That is the subject matter of today's verse. Also, it is the same point is made in Srimad Bhagavatam. Very nice verses there too. Shushusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Shammahatsaya Vipra Punyatirtha Nisheva. It's a very nice verse explaining everything very clearly. First of all, like this karma path, karma kanda, they're trying to get what is called punya. Punya means good karma. Good karma. Now we may, have some, by bad karma, we may be in a bad situation. We're not so intelligent. We're not so strong. We're not so wealthy. So by this karma kanda, they try to improve these things. The idea is at the end, you see, actually it's very funny. The idea is at the end you give it up anyway. You become frustrated with it. So it seems to be a quite futile endeavor. But anyway, they're interested in developing this punya. And also another point, you see, punya, good karma, it also means piety. You see, so one has to have piety. Yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punya karma, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. In order to realize the absolute truth, one has to be pious person. One cannot be a sinful person. So if one is sinful, then he has to become pious. So karma kanda is offering a way to become pious, but it's very long and slow and difficult. But this verse says, punya tirtha nishevana, that one can immediately become pious, more pious than the most perfect karma kandi. How? Shamhat sevya vipra. You just render service to a pure devotee of the Lord. Just render service to the devotee of Krishna. And that's all the punya you need. Immediately, just by doing a little service, one gets oceans of punya. And then, so that settles the whole karma question. You see, whatever is there that's useful in karma to get piety, you get immediately just by rendering service to pure devotee. Now what about the other thing? Realizing Vasudeva, Vishnu. So, Vasudeva Kataruchi. You get something even more. You get ruchi. You see, the yogis, they get what is called drishti. They can see Vishnu. But the devotee gets ruchi. He gets love for Vishnu. It's much more superior. He gets attraction for Vishnu. So this is so wonderful. Now how do we get that? How do we get that ruchi? So shushusho shradhanasya. One should just hear from that pure devotee one is serving. One should hear with faith. And then Vasudeva Kata Ruchi, in this way, through Krishna Kata, through the subject matter of Krishna's name, form, qualities, activities, one gets this ruchi, one gets taste. One desires to hear more and more about Krishna. And then the perfection is, as explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, Shruteksha, Shruta Ikshita. This means one sees the Lord through the ears. By pure hearing, one actually sees Krishna as he is in the heart. So, this is so nice. And as we said, it's for everyone. Just like 9:32 we read, Krishna says Striya. Striya means woman. Striya Vaishya Tapta Shudra. So Striya, you see, Stri, this word Stri, in Sanskrit means that which expands material enjoyment, material pleasure. Just as we see, even just driving here, coming off the highway, then I saw on either side of the road, there's these big signs advertising different products. I don't know what exactly it was all about that was being advertised. but one just sees beautiful women in the picture. You see smiling young ladies in different poses, and there's this promise of sense gratification associated with that product. The subtle messages, you see, if you smoke wacko cigarettes, then this lovely young lady will fall in love with you. If you wear, brizzy t-shirts, then man is really Brahma Buddha, really spirit soul. So, woman like man then can practice brahmachariti. Prabhupada translated brahmachariti in one letter. It means Krishna consciousness. But you combine brahmachariti, it means brahmacharya. Actually, this word brahmacharya just means Krishna consciousness. Along the way, it also means one should not have illicit sex. You see, either none at all, no sex of any kind. That's called akhanda brahmacharya. Or one can be grihastha brahmacharya. One can be married and one can have children. But one uses the sex only for that, only for producing children, not for sense gratification. Now this is of course very revolutionary, because in modern society everybody is mad after this sex life. And thus everyone has become very much attached to this body, very much focused on this body, either man's body or woman's body. And then by having so strongly accepted this upadi bhuta, then they have to accept all the miseries that come with it, because this body is a miserable place. And then they're struggling, they're in great difficulty. And then they speculate how to solve all these problems that they've created themselves by their intense material attachment. So one of these ideas for solving the problems is the so-called feminist movement, women's liberation, equality of the sexes. Now what is that really all about? I recently, just a little while ago, read in one news magazine, one feminist, she was explaining what it really means. And she said, what it really means is we want to have sex just like the men have sex, anytime they want. You see, without any shame, without having to worry about having baby. She said that's the real heart of feminism. Feminism, is that how you say it? Anyway, whatever it is. It's just another word. It doesn't really mean anything. So that's the heart. The heart is this sense gratification. We want sex. Therefore we accept this designation, I am woman. And we will try to attain liberty, freedom in this body. But that's impossible. The whole thing is a big, stupid contradiction. That's just like the men. That means, you just want to follow the men. You say you're a liberated woman, but immediately you take what the men doing as your example. And that's what you want to do. So how are you liberated from man's influence? You're just following them. And not only that, you're following them in a very stupid way. Because who says that example is right? Those men are going to hell. The whole world is going to hell. Do you want to follow? You think that's very intelligent? No, that's very less intelligent. Why don't you do something really radical? Why don't you just give up sex completely? This is our challenge. Why don't you do something really radical, really liberate yourself, and give up sex? Stop following these men, because they're all in Maya. So this is our program. We want to liberate both the men and the women. Because we know from the Vedic scriptures right where the problem lies. Actually, that the so-called liberated woman, she put her finger on it. She said it's sex. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem, is this sex life. Mitunya agara. Right? It's called shackle. Mitunya means sex and agara means shackle, or chain. It's what chains us to the cycle of birth and death. So that chain has to be broken. So as I said, woman is always associated more with that sensuality or lust or so-called love. So it's considered then in some circles, some spiritual circles, that women don't have a chance to make any spiritual advancement. But it's not so. It's not so. Because this process of hearing, this bhakti process is open to everyone. You just have to take it. And there are so many examples. We have in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, our line of great spiritual masters. So, of course, there's a strict Sampradaya line of the most prominent spiritual masters, but there are actually many spiritual masters. And among them, there are actually many women. And one of them is, we celebrate her appearance day in the summer, but I think it's already passed. Anyway, her name is Ganga Mata Goswamini. So she was a woman. So that's the first strike against her in the spiritual sense. And not only that, she was a princess. So that's another strike, because she came from a very wealthy family and soft life and all of that. But somehow she was always inclined to Krishna consciousness from a very young age. She always had an interest in Krishna consciousness. And then when she became a young woman and her parents were planning to get her married, then, as so many young people today, she came to a crisis. And she told her parents, I don't want to get married. I don't want to do anything. I just want to, develop my spiritual life to the fullest. I want to come to know the absolute truth in full. Otherwise, I just cannot go on blindly in material existence. I don't know where it is leading me. So then the parents, they actually died. I heard that. I mean, not immediately, but they thought, they were thinking, we spent our whole life raising this girl. And we gave her everything. She's a princess. And now she doesn't even want it. So then what's the use of our life? So they lost all interest in living. They just died. And then for a short while she had to take over, because she was the only heir, the only child. But then she was able to appoint some others to manage the kingdom. And then she went to Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, she was living very renounced because she wanted to become Krishna conscious. So she was looking for a spiritual master, and then she was going around hearing different sadhus speak. And then one day she heard Haridas Pandit, who was a great Gaudiya Vaishnava, spiritual master. And she heard his explanation of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then she became most attracted. And then in her heart she thought, here is my spiritual master. But he decided to test her. So he said, what? You're a woman, you're a princess, how can I accept you? And then she became even more austere, more renounced. And she was rendering service, you see, around the ashram, whatever service she could do, and doing it so selflessly. And she was glowing with a kind of spiritual effulgence. So then finally, he had to accept her. He couldn't ignore anymore that she was becoming very spiritually advanced. So then he gave her initiation and gave her some service. I think she was doing some service at Govardhan Hill. But then he called her one day. She was doing some Vrindavan, some Dham Seva, service to the Dham. But then he called her one day. And she came before him and he said, now I'm going to give you your real service. And so she was very expectant. What is that? And he said, I want you to give up your shyness, your your womanly shyness, your womanly pride, your womanly fear. Just go out and preach. So then she did that, and she became very famous. And then he sent her to Puri, Jagannath Puri. And so she was preaching there, and everyone was very most surprised to hear her. She would lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam so nicely, everything she'd heard from a spiritual master, inspire people in Krishna consciousness. So the king, he was a descendant of Maharaj Prataparudra. So he granted her some land at a place called Sveta Ganga, which is a kind of body of water. Sveta means white, Ganga of course refers to the Ganga, Sveta Ganga, yes, Sveta Ganga. So he gave her an ashram there. And so she was engaged in preaching, and she would go see Lord Jagannath every day, and she was simply ecstatic in Krishna consciousness. Then there came one day called Mahavaruni Day, when it is very nice for devotees to go to the river Ganga and bathe. Now the river Ganga is quite far away from Puri. She would have to go up to Bengal. So she was thinking like that I would like to go up to Bengal and bathe in the Ganga. And it's this Mahavaruni Day, one does this in the middle of the night. But I've never received any such instruction from my spiritual master. So, although I would very much like to go, I dare not go. I will just stay here. So then, that night of Mahavaruni night, she was staying in her ashram, taking rest. And then, suddenly, she got up somehow. For some reason, she woke up, and she decided to bathe in this Sveta Ganga. She thought, let me bathe here, and maybe I will get some result from that. So she bathed, and then suddenly a great wave pushed her away from the shore, and she was carried as if by a river, a long, long distance. She didn't know what was happening. And then she was carried into the Jagannath temple. This is in the middle of the night. And she found herself inside the temple. And there was Lord Jagannath. And she saw millions and millions of pilgrims inside the temple. And they were bathing in water that was emanating from the lotus feet of Lord Jagannath. And she realized that this was the water that had carried her. So this was an amazing scene. So she was bathing very happily in that water, which the river Ganges flows from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. But she had a special Ganges river that was floating from the lotus feet of Lord Jagannath. So she was bathing in there. There was millions of pilgrims having kirtan, chanting, very uproarious, all inside the Jagannath temple. So she was very happily observing all the rituals connected with this Mahavaruni, bathing in the nectar emanating from the lotus feet of Lord Jagannath. Outside of the temple watchmen, they heard all this sound from inside. What's going on in there? So then they sent word to the Brahmins, and then they're in charge of the temple, and the Brahmins sent word to the king. And so the king and his men and the Brahmins, all the priests, they came in a big party. And they opened up the temple door. And they went inside. And all they found was this one Ganga Mata standing there. And they said, what is this woman doing in here? We don't know. And then they speculated, she has come to steal the jewels of Lord Jagannath. She was posing as a sadhu, but she's actually just a rascal. So they arrested her. But the whole time she was very happy because all of her desires had been fulfilled. So she was thrown in the jail. And she was just chanting Hare Krishna. And so then the Brahmins and the king, everyone went to take rest. They decided tomorrow morning we will see about all this. So the king went to sleep, and in his dream he saw Lord Jagannath. Lord Jagannath said, "You and your Brahmins are all rascals. And if you don't release my devotee immediately and surrender to her lotus feet, then there's going to be big trouble here in Jagannath." So the king got up and he immediately collected the Brahmins, and they went and they released her, and they all became her disciples. She initiated them all. Then from this event, she got her name Ganga Mata. Ganga Mata Goswamini. So, anyway, there are many more stories about it, but it's a very nice story illustrating how there is no restriction in Krishna consciousness. The only thing is that one has to get off of this bodily platform, whether it be man's body platform or woman's body platform. One has to get off by the hearing process, by becoming attached to someone who is representing the absolute truth as it is presented in the scriptures. Becoming attached to that sound vibration, that pure sound vibration emanating from that representative of the parampara, and render service, render pure devotional service. And one becomes empowered to preach Krishna consciousness. Krishna says, Amara Avyaya Guru. Everyone can become Guru. Everyone can deliver the conditioned souls. Just take up this Sankirtan movement. So it is factually for everyone. But it is, as we said, there is no program for material sense gratification. So this is the footnote to the whole thing. It all sounds very nice, yes, everyone become a devotee, go back home, back to Godhead. But this is the footnote. Mahat sevam dvaram ahul vimuktesh. So we can get what is called vimukta sangha, liberated association, by serving Mahat, by serving pure devotee of the Lord, hearing from Him. We can become fully qualified in Krishna consciousness. Become a liberated person ourselves. All of that is there. But we must remember the other side. Tamodvaram yoshita sanghi sangha. But by associating with the objects of the senses, by engaging in materialistic sense gratification, then this opens the tamodvaram. What means the door to hell. The door, tamo means darkness. The door to darkness. The door to illusion, the door to material existence. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has compared this material world. He's used the phrase Vishtagarta, means a hole for passing stool. It's like sometimes one sees along the highway, there are these places, rest stops, that are a little primitive. So it's just like a toilet with just a hole goes somewhere down into the ground. There's very much stool in there. So, very nasty place. So down there, in all that stool, there are so many living entities, and they think they're happy. Worms and flies and whatever they may be. They think they're having a very nice time. Their whole life is being lived in that big tank of stool. And they have everything going on there. They have their, newspapers and television. Their whole life is happening, everything there. Very nice. So Lord Chaitanya has compared this whole material world to that. It's like that. Because it's based on this body. Material life means life based on this body. And this body is a bag, more or less, just a bag of stool. So if we think I am this body and we live only for sense gratification, then we're just like those creatures down in the stool tank. And not only that, there are those who are in this stool tank consciousness or Vishtagarta consciousness. And they're making propaganda. They're propagating this consciousness. So there's Vishtagarta books, you see, stool hole books, stool hole newspapers, stool hole radio, stool hole television. You see, propagating the smell everywhere. Teaching, releasing the smell and then giving propaganda. This is good. This is a sweet smell. At first people go, what is that horrible smell? But when they hear enough, songs on the radio, the smell is wonderful. And they read it in the newspapers, scientists discovered, stool smells sweet. And the astronaut is sending down from his orbit, there's stool here too. And so good. Then gradually they start to believe, oh yes, this stool is, actually it's nice. So then they develop consciousness in this way. While still in the human form, they develop consciousness like fly or pig. Because they think stool is very nice. They desire to live in such stool pit. So this is the material life. So that's the Vishtagarta, you see, propaganda. But this Krishna consciousness movement is making Vimukta Sangha propaganda. Vimukta Sangha means liberated association. Srila Prabhupada came to this Western world to associate with us, and by his association, liberate us. And we associate with Prabhupada even now by distributing his books and preaching from his books, quoting from his books, and doing all the things he told us to do. That is Vimukta Sangha. And he told us to play the little drum, you see, little mridanga, and big mridanga, printing press, and propagate Vimukta Sangha. So we have our own books and magazines and radio and television propagating Krishna consciousness. So this is the choice right now for everyone. Everyone can enter this Vimukta Sangha and leave aside this stool hole way of life, become factually liberated. Factually liberated, not this bogus liberation. You see, liberated material body. This is a contradiction in terms. Whether it's some man or woman, doesn't matter. Man, woman, cat, dog. If they claim, they hold a sign, I'm free, I'm liberated, it's a lie. It's a falsehood. Nobody's liberated if they identify with this body, which is just a place of birth and death. We have to factually come out of the bodily consciousness. And that we can do by tuning in to this pure sound vibration coming down the Sri Guru Parampara, as Krishna says here. Then anyone, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter man, woman, Vaishya, Shudra, intellectual, non-intellectual, simple, complicated, black, white, green, yellow, doesn't matter. Upadibhuta, doesn't matter. Just tune in, anye tvevam ajananta shutpamyev upasate tepi chapatam kevam mrityu shuddhi parayana. Just hear from the bona fide authority, Krishna consciousness authority, and in this way transcend the path of birth and death. So, Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada's books ki Jai. Distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books ki Jai. Hare Krishna Center Sunday Feast ki Jai. Are there any questions? Was I too heavy for Sunday Feast? Some places you get in a lot of trouble if you give a lecture like that on Sunday.